Welcome back, everyone, to the podcast. We are bringing philosophy to the people yet again here with Dr. Jim, continuing our series on Wilhelm Gottfried Leibniz's ultimate origination of things. Man, they just don't name essays like they used to, do they, Jim?
That's right. That's right. The man staked a claim in the title there. He staked a claim.
Yeah, man, it's so baller. So we're just, guys, if you didn't catch part one, you do need to listen to this. I cannot imagine that you could just hop in at part two and this will make sense.
It'd be very difficult. Yeah. I mean, it's like paragraph by paragraph in the essay. Right?
Yeah. So we're reading, as Jim said, paragraph by paragraph, trying to just clarify, comment, add some additional thoughts. And yeah, really enjoyed the first one. I suspect maybe we should start with a little bit of summary, Jim, before we continue. But what do you think is worth reiterating or highlighting from the first conversation? Go ahead. Yeah.
Well, I think, for me, it's situating this in the big picture of what Leibniz is trying to achieve, both in this essay and like overall, right? And we get, you get a what is now a fairly standard cosmological, I'm going to say cosmological, you're going to get a fairly standard contingency argument out of this, because this is the standard, right, of contingency arguments.
This is the granddaddy, right?
Yeah, this is the granddaddy of it, right? And but the things I like to emphasize is, first, like what Leibniz has done, as he says, is there's two kinds of questions being asked here about the ultimate origination of things. Both, why does anything exist at all? Any contingent thing exist at all? And why does this particular set of contingent things that we have, when by the very premises of the argument, we know that there could have been other contingent things we could have had, right? Why that one? Okay, so there's two questions in play that Leibniz thinks need to be answered by.
Right.
So whatever the ultimate origination of things is, it needs to answer those two questions.
Right.
Why do things exist, right, as contingent beings, and why does this set of contingent beings exist?
Right.
And the other very important premise in what Leibniz is up to is he's granting, this is the geometry book example. He's granting that we have, a mathematical explanation of why one contingent state of affairs or one set of contingent beings gives rise to another set of contingent beings or another contingent state of affairs. He's granting, that there's a geometry of time and space that offers us a necessitating explanation from one link in the chain to the next. Right? And he has no problem saying, hey, maybe that chain has gone on to an infinity in the past, and then maybe it will go on to an infinity in the future. He says, I'm not worried about that question. That's not what I'm asking. Okay. And he calls he calls it sometimes in this essay physical necessity or hypothetical necessity. And I think it's the hypothetical part that's important here, which is to say, given that things exist, right? Given that the things that exist do exist. So given that there are contingent beings, right? And given that we have this particular set of contingent beings, he grants you, as a good early modern rationalist, that's all we need as an explanation for why the next round of contingency is going to occur. Right.
So maybe we can put an illustration to that. I mean, I like the phoenix example for this, right? So you can imagine phoenix is this legendary mythical bird that when it dies, there, from its ashes come another phoenix, right? And maybe it's a case that if you studied the phoenix and its sort of physical configuration enough, you would have everything that you need to know of why one phoenix leads to another phoenix, leads to another phoenix, leads to another phoenix, right?
Right.
But if somebody asks, well, why are there any phoenixes at all? And somebody replies, well, because there's this prior phoenix, and before that there was this prior phoenix. What we have to understand is that if we're thinking of explanations in terms of explanation of fact, right?
Yep.
And why is it that there are why is there anything of the type phoenix at all? Pointing to some prior phoenix is pointing to something that is causally posterior to the fact that there are phoenixes in the first place, right? And that is, of course, a non-starter. It's a complete non-starter. It's in fact, it's viciously circular, right? You can't point to something that is causally posterior to the fact in order to explain the fact, right? And I think that's the real crux of it. Leibniz gets at it through illustration, but I think that is the fundamental problem. At best, you might get some type of local explanation, but not a global explanation.
Right.
So that's but as you emphasize, Jimmy, this is right. It's not just that there are phoenixes or geometry books or whatever. or any, sorry, not just there's anything that's contingent, but why is there this type of thing or these configurations of things, right? Why did it have this shape, right? So there's two aspects here that need to be addressed, and you do have to make that distinction and keep both of these in mind.
And an important thing too, I think, like you hit this too, is Leibniz he says very clearly in the paragraphs we read last time that, hey, the question of why are phoenixes phoenixes, that's a dumb question. That it is metaphysically necessary that if you have a phoenix, it's a phoenix. And I don't just mean that in the analytic tautological sense. It's like asking, why is an electron a negatively charged particle? Well, that's what it is. There's no deeper explanation about it. Like the things have stopped there. And so Leibniz is perfectly happy to say that there are metaphysically necessary natures of things, right? But it's not metaphysically necessary that there be anything contingent that has such a nature like that. And it's also not metaphysically necessary that there wouldn't have been something else, right? Okay. And that gets us into his, the strong version of the PSR that he ended with, that we talked about, is that, Leibniz thinks, and, and I'm not sure, it would be interesting. I mean, I don't know how far we can get into the debate about this, right? But in his view, there has to be an explanation both for what exists and what does not exist, because he thinks all possibles are equally good candidates for actuality. And so you can't just say, well, this is the world we happen to get, because he'll say, look, those other worlds are equally entitled to actuality, right? And therefore we need an explanation that decides in favor of one of the other.
Yeah. Right? And this is where we'll get to his efficiency ratio at some point, right?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. And also in the background of all this too is his reading of Plato and all that, where he does think that the only thing that will ultimately satisfy us as an ultimate explanation of things will be in terms of a kind of moral goodness.
Moral explanation. Yeah. Right. Yeah. So awesome. And one other thing I want to say is, because this is the kind of granddaddy, I guess, of contingency argument. Somebody and we slightly touched on these before, but I just want to revisit them before we move forward. Is somebody might say, well, hey, maybe it is, maybe it is just necessary, right? That a phoenix exists. Now, first off, that's strongly against intuitions, because most of us would assume that if there were a phoenix, it would be contingent. But I want to say, like, that's not really an objection to the contingency argument. That's actually a concession of it, right? So the contingent, and this is important because in the later developments, and Bill Rowe did this, right? He broke it out into two stages. He says, if you dissect the contingency argument, the first stage is meant to just get to a necessary reality or a necessary being. And then the second stage is to run a kind of conceptual analysis on what that sort of thing is or could be, right? So to kind of object to a contingency argument by just calling something necessary is really just saying stage one's correct.
Yeah,
right?
Exactly. Yeah,
that's all I was saying, right? And it struck me after a conversation, because you brought up Rowe's objection, which is an interesting one, of like, maybe there's just this law that contingent things have to exist, some contingent things, right?
It's metaphysically necessary that there be metaphysical contingencies, but not one particular set of them or other. Yeah,
right. And then somebody could ask, and the reason I thought that's interesting is because Bill is the guy who kind of identified these two stages. I mean, people realized that before him, but he did a nice job of articulating it, right? Somebody asked, well, Bill, is that law contingent or necessary? If it's contingent, then it's useless, right? If it's necessary, then stage one is complete, right? We can go on to the conceptual analysis, and then we'll argue that a law isn't a good candidate for a necessary reality, right?
Right.
So I just thought making those distinctions might be helpful for people. Not exactly mapping with Leibniz's formulation, but kind of fast forwarding the debate can kind of show how you might maneuver around something like that, right?
And we sort of mentioned this, though. I mean, last time, it's not exactly what Leibniz doing in this essay, but I do think anyone who's really into this debate about contingency arguments would tell you that all considerations of contingency arguments are footnotes on Leibniz, right? Like they're all, you've got something like it in the medievals, but this is like the real.
It's the granddaddy.
And and you've got Clarke's version too, but once again,
that's right.
That's Clarke, in a correspondence with Leibniz. Yeah.
But I mean, he does kind of hint at what he thinks is a sort of marker of contingency, which finitude, right? Anything with restrictions or boundaries, and that is consistent right on through to the contemporary literature, right? I mean, right on through to Proust and Rasmussen and Kuhns, right? They are going to say, look, we have to shave all arbitrary limits, boundaries, restrictions to really get something that can satisfy the PSR and a necessary reality. And that would rule out even something like just a law, right? Something like that.
Right.
All right. So shall we head back to the text now and
let's do it?
pick up, Jim? All right, here we go. Yeah. Let me adjust my spectacles here and find out where the heck I am on my computer. I think it's this. All right. Can you see this scrolling up and down? Do I have the right screen? All right.
I think it was that furthermore, right in the middle of page 150.
All right. So here we go. Furthermore. Sorry, guys. I should have had this marked beforehand. Oh, you know what? I don't think I have the right document up. Apologies. Let me find the right one.
Oh, do you have the Bennett one?
Yeah. Furthermore, you said page 150.
Yeah.
What paragraph is it, Jim?
It is the second paragraph to begin on page 150.
All right. Let's see here. Oh, see, this one got all turned around on me. Sorry, I think I have the wrong one up. What does the paragraph begin with? Give me the first sentence.
Furthermore, in order, do you want me just to read it?
Yeah, go ahead. Take this one.
Are you okay if you don't see it?
Yeah.
Sure. All right. Furthermore, in order to explain a bit more distinctly how temporal, contingent, or physical truths arise from eternal, essential, or metaphysical truths, we must first acknowledge that since something rather than nothing exists, there's a certain urge for existence, or so to speak, straining toward existence in possible things, or in possibility or essence itself. In a word, essence in and of itself strives for existence. Furthermore, it follows that from this, that all possibles, that is, everything that exists, everything that expresses essence or possible reality, strive with equal right for existence, in proportion to the amount of essence or reality or the degree of perfection they contain. For perfection is nothing but the amount of essence.
Okay, excellent. I found a spot now.
Yeah, so. Cool. All right. Anything you want to go on that paragraph?
Yeah, there's two ways.
A lot going on in it.
There's a lot there that we could spend an entire episode on. So let me throw out two comments, and Jim, I want to get your take on how you would interpret this. I mean, one interpretation, which I don't think is right. And remember, this is the job of anybody who's engaging with a thinker. And I just want to remind people of this. This is sort of a theme we keep coming back to, a philosophy for the people. Your job is to try and understand an author on their terms, to read them as charitably as you think they could be read. And then if you think you can even go further than that, to give your own sort of argument in favor of, like, how strong could this possibly be? Even if he didn't make it this strong, could I make it even stronger? That's how you do good philosophy, right? So I think the least charitable read here, and I could see somebody objecting to this, is like, hey, how could the essence of anything that doesn't exist possibly be striving for existence? It doesn't exist, right? And if it doesn't exist and it has no powers, it couldn't possibly be striving because it's nothing, right? However, I think probably the more plausible read is that if we're thinking from the theist perspective, God, in understanding himself, understands all the ways that anything could participate in existence and is impressed, right, by certain things that could exist. And from that perspective, you could see how something like this actually might begin to make a lot of sense and start to be forceful. So I want to get your thoughts on that, or maybe you have a different interpretation of this altogether.
No, I don't. I've always found this Leibniz is a guy who uncorked a lot of strange things, and I've always found this among the stranger things that he uncorks, right? But if you look at towards the end of that paragraph, he talks about how the greater the amount of essence, right, that something has, right, or the higher degree of a perfection, right, the greater tendency it has towards existence. Okay,
the more impressive it is, we might say.
The more impressive it is, yeah. And so you can see he's gesturing towards the divine essence there, which would be, the complete expression of essence, right? There's no way to be that it isn't, right? Okay, and if you think of it, if there's no way to be that something isn't, then it would seem no matter what you have existing, it is. Right? So if all possible positive ways of being are what God is, then whatever exists is an expression of what he is. Do you see that?
In some finite configuration.
In some finite configuration of it, right? It's an express. Okay, and so I think he's getting to here, and this is other things he's doing, and it's going to relate to his ontological argument is, come what may, the perfect expression of essence has to be, right? Like if there is a perfect expression of essence, then, and he thinks there would have to be one, then that thing has to be actual, because no matter what you have, it's an expression of that thing, right?
Yeah.
Okay. So I think it's not what he's up to, but I think he's hinting at his ontological argument
Yeah.
in there. Okay. Right.
And there is a sort of flavoring of the great chain of being here, the hierarchy of being,
Yeah.
all that sort of
Yeah.
thing. So you can tell
Yeah.
there's that kind of influence in the background. How strong it is,
Yeah.
I'm not sure, but it's there, right? It's coming through.
And also, like, you're getting a sense here of how fine grain a modality that Leibniz operates by, or the fine grains of differences of modalities he operates by. So what he's saying here is, look, to say something is possible is to say, trivially, it could be, okay. But to say that it could be, like what's the default for something that could be? Is it that it would be, or that it wouldn't be? Do you see that? Okay. And I think what he's basically saying is, given that anything exists at all, it must be the default is toward existence, right? That it would be impossible for there to be nothing, right? Not nothing contingent, but for there to be nothing, okay?
Right.
If we agree that it's impossible for there to be nothing, right? Well, then we have to say whatever possible being is, its default is to be. So now we have to explain why we got the configuration of being that we got, right? Not just why we got one at all, because you're going to have one no matter what, right? To say that being is possible is to say its tendency is to be.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. That is certainly starts to help make sense of why you get the theodicy you get from
Exactly.
Leibniz, right?
Exactly.
Yeah.
Right.
But that is something. Again, different theists of different stripes are going to have different takes on this, but you can see how that could be a very rational perspective for somebody, right? From the theist perspective, right? We agree that it is strictly metaphysically impossible there could be nothing, right? Especially of that sort of purely actual reality. And then, God is the unrestricted act of understanding himself, understands all the ways that things could exist, right? And we know that there are theists who have taken the kind of the strong commitment that I think most theists want to reject now, of necessary emanation, right? Now, if necessary emanation is correct, then Leibniz's theory of modality is kind of like spot on, right?
Yeah.
But even if necessary emanation isn't correct, we could still say there's a strong impression, and I'm using that term really loosely, right? Or motives of a particular sort, that even if God didn't have to create anything or any configuration, there's maybe really good or strong reasons that he would, right? Which could be kind of motivating this. Yeah. What are your thoughts on that?
Well, one of the reasons I think this little paragraph is so important is, a lot of the kind of like, Leibniz bashing that's gone on since Voltaire, right? Paints him as this, this sort of silly, facile, guy who, just thought the world was so great, it was perfect. Okay. And
which is a caricature, right?
Which a caricature,
and Voltaire was really good at beating up cartoons.
Yeah. And what you're seeing in this essay is Leibniz is going to have his entire theology, right? His God is, God is the perfect being, and the world as the best of all possible worlds, spun out of his theory of modality. Do you see? So it's not like Leibniz's optimism about the perfection of the world and his view of divinity is a consequence of his understanding of modal logic. Okay.
Yeah.
It's not the other way around. Like, he's showing you can run it from the modal logic to those conclusions here, right? In other places, he'll run it in the other direction. But like here, he's showing you how, if you just take, because think how the essay begins. It begins with distinctions about different types of modality between hypothetical versus metaphysical necessity, right? We're going to, the notion of necessitation versus inclination. He's giving you this fine-grained set of modal distinctions, and he's going to show out of that you get God as the creator of best of all possible worlds.
Yeah, very cool.
Right.
All right, should I can take the next paragraph.
Do you mind to take it up? Yeah.
Yeah.
Let's do it.
All right. I notice I'm sharing the wrong screen. I'm not going to fix that now.
That's all right.
I'll fix it after. So, gentle
All right.
listeners, you can of course read along. This document is free online. Okay, but here we go. And Jim, stop me at any point
Sure.
if this is a thick paragraph. From this, it is obvious that of the infinite combinations of possibilities and possible series, the one that exists is the one through which the most essence or possibility is brought into existence. In practical affairs, one always follows the decision rule in accordance with which one ought to seek the maximum or the minimum. Namely, one prefers the maximum effect at the minimum cost, so to speak. You can tell he's an engineer, right?
Yeah.
And in this context, time, place, or in a word, the receptivity or capacity of the world can be taken for the cost or the plot of ground on which the most pleasing building possible is to be built, and the variety of shapes therein corresponds to the pleasingness of the building and the number and elegance of the rooms. And the situation is like that in certain games in which all places on the board are supposed to be filled in accordance with certain rules, where at the end, blocked by certain spaces, you will be forced to leave more places empty than you could have or wanted to unless you use some trick. There is, however, a certain procedure through which one can most easily fill the board. Thus, if, for example, I think this one gets cut off, Jim. I'm losing.
Suppose that we are directed to construct a triangle without being given any other directions. And that takes over to 151 there.
Perfect. Thank you. Yeah. The result is that an equilateral triangle would be drawn. And if we suppose that we are to go from one point to another without being directed to use a particular path, the path chosen will be the easiest or the shortest one. And so, assuming that at some time being is to prevail over non-being, or that there is a reason why something rather than nothing is to exist, or that something is to pass from possibility to actuality, although nothing beyond this is determined, it follows that there would be as much as there possibly can be, given the capacity of time and space, that is, the capacity of the order of possible existence. In a word, it is just like tiles laid down so as to contain as many possibles in the given area. Okay. So, gentle listeners, this is if you kept up with modern Leibnizians, this is why you have these sort of God just creates infinitely many worlds. Right?
Yeah.
Right? And like his thought here is still motivating a lot of contemporary philosophers. Will say, look, there's some lower bound where there's just not enough goodness or plainness. God won't go below that. But otherwise, it's all there, right? All the way up. No infinite upper bound.
And so, and so the PSR is driving this. So in the prior paragraph, he said, look, we have to have a reason for what exists, but he thinks to have a reason for what exists, that entails it's the same thing as having a reason for why all the other things don't exist, right?
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
And so now here you are, and so he says, what do you do prior to this? There has to be a metaphysically necessary thing that accounts for the existence of things. Okay, great. Got that. He hasn't talked about its nature yet, right? Now he's asking, all right, but there were other possibilities. And so now we have to explain why we got the ones that the set of actualized possibilities that we got rather than other ones. Okay. Yeah. Mm-hmm. So now here you are, you know, like there's all these ways things could go. And he's not even talking about this being a rational agent yet. He's just saying the PSR demands explanation. Okay. Mm-hmm. So there must be some explanation why we got this set of things rather than other ones. Okay. And what he's saying here is, well, so think of it. If there's one state of affairs in the world that is not explained, right, then you don't have, the PSR is not satisfied. Okay. So you need an explanation that explains absolutely every single state of affairs in the world. Okay.
Every nook and cranny.
Every nook and cranny. And now the engineer kicks in, but it wouldn't be ad hoc. You wouldn't say, well, we have state of affairs X because of reason X. We have state of affairs Y because of reason Y. We have state of affairs Z because of reason Z, right? That would be really, really, really inefficient engineering. You have a different law for every single phenomenon would be a very terrible way to build a bridge, right? Mm-hmm. And so what is good engineering? It would, and moreover, he's going to say, this would not satisfy the PSR if there was a simpler way to do it. Like, why would you do all these extra things when you could have done it through one thing? Mm-hmm, okay. Mm-hmm. So what he's saying here is the world we got has to be the most maximally efficient world. It maximizes the amount of being or goodness that can be gotten by the minimal number of law-like principles. Okay. And as we're going to see as this goes on, what would be the minimal principle, right? What is the law of everything for Leibniz? It'll be that it's the best, right? That it contributes to the overall moral goodness of the universe. Okay.
Yeah.
So that's where he's going here. It's like what we're going to see is like, well, God creates the best of all possible worlds, because otherwise there would not be a sufficient reason for the existence of any world at all.
Yeah.
Right. That's why he's saying that. And it's built on this, we thought it was earlier in the show too, is like other shows, that for Leibniz, that he thinks of God, or he thinks of reality as an engineering problem.
He does.
Right? He does. Yeah.
Right. And just let me clarify again, when we're doing this project, we are just trying to understand Leibniz's position, right? There's many theists that are going to part ways with Leibniz here, right?
Yeah, right.
And we can talk about that. I think that's fun to explore, but we're trying to get Leibniz right and understand where Leibniz is coming from. And I do think it's funny. I mean, O'Connor comes up and he's got, his sort of Leibnizian streak in his book. And he's like, look, if you're like me and you take the sort of perfect world theodicy, and you can argue whether his is actually Leibniz's or if it's kind of an expansion of it. He'll be like, people might not like the answers that you can give from this theodicy, but that doesn't mean they're not true. Like somebody could say, well, why didn't God create a better world than this one? O'Connor's like, he did. You're just not in it.
Exactly. Yeah.
I was like, I can't help but laugh at it because it's so pithy, but it's like, maybe you're just in one of the lower bound worlds, right? And
in Leibniz's sense, it's all the same world. It's just you have different regions of the world operated by different sets of laws, right? But it all comes down, it all falls under one law.
Right.
And it is the law of the best.
Yeah. The world could be infinitely many universes, for example.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah. So we got to be careful with how we're using the term world.
What's the best ratio?
World just means possible state of affairs. Right.
What's the best ratio you could get? Right. 1 to infinite. Right.
Yeah.
And so what Leibniz is saying is the only way there is a sufficient explanation for everything, right? An ultimate explanation for everything is if it's built on a 1 to infinite principle. Okay. One principle for infinite phenomena, right?
Yeah.
Like why this world? Well, because this law demands every single detail of it, which we're going to see is going to go here, if not explicitly in this, but elsewhere, that's going to mean this is the best of all possible worlds, and the one principle behind it ultimately is it is for the best. It's morally good. It's the morally best world. Yeah.
And I do also want to point out too that there's obviously been a whole lot of work done on the principle of sufficient reason as well.
Yeah,
we're trying to understand how Leibniz thinks.
Leibniz, exactly. Yeah, we're not. Yeah,
there's many people out there who would say no, this PSR is way too strong.
Way too strong.
We don't need that one. In fact, we should avoid that one. We can take a much weaker PSR, but that's for another conversation. We're just trying to understand Leibniz at this point.
And we'll get into this as we go on, though. But I think a lot of what's motivating that is, people who see the best of all possible worlds as theologically odious, right? And I'm not convinced it is, right? I'm not convinced it is. Yeah.
Yeah, or right, or who might think that it leads to a sort of modal fatalism. That might be, but Leibniz has answers to that. Leibniz himself has answers to fatalism. So I don't know if the Leibnizian is stuck with that just from their PSR necessarily either.
And as we'll see, the won't versus can't distinction is going to be big. Yep.
Right. So we can talk about more of that maybe on the wrap up episode.
Well, it's going to come up too in here.
Yeah. Good. All right. Well, let's. I
think tear back in.
Yeah, I think I got the right document now.
Excellent.
How's that look? Yeah. Does that look better? Okay.
Yeah, you get my highlights from 1998 in there too.
Yeah. Apologies for my not. This is you get what you pay for with the philosophy for the people. We don't really do show prep. We just come on here and we just jam.
I think it endears us to our audience. Right?
All right. Continuing on then. From this, we can already understand in a wondrous way how a certain divine mathematics or metaphysical mechanism is used in the very origination of things, and how the determination of a maximum finds a place. The case is like that in geometry, where the straight angle is distinguished from all angles, or like the case of a liquid placed in another of a different kind, which forms itself into the most capacious shape, namely that of a sphere, or best of all, like the case in common mechanics, where the struggling of many heavy bodies with one another finally gives rise to a motion through which there results the greatest ascent taken as a whole. For just as all possibles strive with equal right for existence in proportion to their reality, so too all heavy things strive with equal right to descend in proportion to their heaviness. And just as the one case results in the motion which contains as much descent of heavy things as is possible, the other case gives rise to a world in which the greatest number of possibles is produced. So he's kind of just building his point there. Jim, do you want to keep going, or do you want to?
I think we hit all that. Yeah.
Yeah, cool.
Exactly.
All right, moving on then. And so we now have physical necessity derived from metaphysics. For even if the world is not metaphysically necessary, in the sense that its contrary implies a contradiction or logical absurdity, it is, however, physically necessary or determined in the sense that its contrary implies imperfection or moral absurdity. Key point of the distinction that you pointed out, Jim. Right. So do you want to stop there, or should we finish the paragraph? Okay. And just as possibility is the foundation of essence, so perfection or degree of essence, through which the greatest number of things are compossible, is the foundation of existence. From this, it is at the same time obvious how the author of the world can be free, even though everything happens determinately, since he acts from a principle of wisdom or perfection. Indeed, indifference arises from ignorance, and the wiser one is, the more one is determined to that which is more perfect. All right, that is a juicy and important paragraph.
I don't know, man. I'm kind of tingling all over.
Gyrations. Yeah, man. I mean, there's that's one for the highlight reel. We'll just
Jim gets tingly.
Yeah, somebody spare our poor editor Olivia the pain of that, and just cut out that 5-second clip as a listener. Do us that favor.
By the way, shout out to Olivia.
Okay. Yeah, she's doing great work. Thank you.
Doing great work for us. Yeah. Okay. So I mean, this is where we knew it was going. Okay, and so he said, what? Okay, so I think we mentioned in the first episode, like one of the things that Leibniz is most trying to achieve in his philosophy is to like basically save the kinds of arguments for a necessary being that you see in Spinoza, okay, without turning the whole world into metaphysically necessary states of affairs, okay?
Right. Mm-hmm.
And he thinks he's just done that because he said, well, okay, you have to have a metaphysically necessary being, otherwise you get you end up having the world being unaccounted for as a whole, right?
Mm-hmm.
So the existence of everything must be accounted for in some sense through the existence of a metaphysically necessary being, but basic modal logic will tell you, if box P is true and implies Q, then box Q is true, right? Okay. If it's necessary that P, right, and P implies Q, then it's going to be necessary that Q, right? I'm thinking that. I hope I'm right. Anyway, and so if the world just follows from the essence of metaphysically necessary essence of a metaphysically necessary being, then the world is metaphysically necessary. And in fact, the whole argument has become self-undermining there because you're trying to explain the contingency of the world, and what you've done is just eliminated the contingency of the world.
Mm-hmm.
Right.
Right. Mm-hmm.
Okay. And so this, go ahead.
Well, let's pause there because this is a big kind of part of it, and I kind of talked about it before, where some objections to the contingency argument are really concessions, right?
Yeah.
Like by essentially granting some metaphysically necessary thing, whatever that is. But however, we have, and this is critical, right? We have a very, very strong intuition, at the very least, apart from arguments, that pretty much everything we encounter is contingent, right?
Yeah.
This is a like. I heard an atheist, a very smart atheist, say the other day, is like that is an intuition that I just can't seem to give up. It seems like the most obvious thing to me, and he was kind of engaging with the contingency argument. I agree with him, right?
Hey, the very first person to take up the pen in philosophy, one of the very first people to take up the pen in philosophy in the Western tradition is Anaximander, and he says, "Gee, things come to be and pass away."
Mm-hmm. Right.
What do you do with that? Right.
Yeah. So like, it's one of those things I don't think we really need arguments for, but of course there are arguments for them, right? Yeah. Essence, existence, distinction, all these sort of things. But I mean, but the point I'm emphasizing is like, if you fall into a modal collapse where these types of arguments just seem to shoot everything through with necessity, that does seem to be a pretty unacceptable cost, right? Certainly it's a significant cost, right? To just our very common sense experience of the really radical contingency of the world, right? So this is the project. And like, look, this is still kind of where the debate is today on a lot of this stuff. How can you get a contingent effect from a necessary cause? And I think, and like to like kind of short circuit all of the very complex literature on this, I think the answer does have to come down from the indeterministic, loosely speaking, action of a free personal agent.
Yes.
Right.
Exactly. And boom, that's right where in that spine tingling paragraph. Right. Yeah.
Yeah. Good thing that we clarified where the tingling was at.
Exactly. Yeah. In the spine. Well, in the spine. For starters. Yeah.
Right, and it was a contingent tingling.
It was a contingent, yeah,
could have been otherwise. Yeah. So serious now. Hold.
Always.
Right, so right, yeah. So like that does seem absolutely right to me, and we know that there are of course many complicated objections. I'm thinking like Rowan van Ingwagen, right, who say like, look, this. Right. How are we going to get anything aside from necessity from necessity? And I think the answer does have to come down to the free action of a personal agent. And we have to give some type of causal story that makes sense of that. Leibniz is giving us one right now. Now there's other ones aside from Leibniz. Right.
Yeah.
But Leibniz is giving us one right now. So yeah, back to you, Jim.
Exactly. Yeah. So Leibniz would say, whatever the ultimate origination of things has to be, and this is where you're going, its nature has to be metaphysically necessary. Its existence has to be metaphysically necessary. Otherwise, we just, the buck hasn't stopped. Okay. But now its act of causing everything else to exist cannot be metaphysically necessary. Otherwise we get modal collapse. Right.
Right. Mm-hmm.
And so what Leibniz is saying then, but also if it's frivolous, if it's a coin toss, right? If there is no explanation for its act of causing everything else, then we have not satisfied the PSR. Okay. So what is the only non-metaphysically necessary but still fully explanatory explanation that you can have? And Leibniz says it's the an act of a morally good being, right? Mm-hmm. It has reasons for what it's doing, even though it was not in any way, shape, or form forced to do it. Won't isn't the same as can't, right? Mm-hmm. And this is what he says in this very paragraph we just read, right? Is that so the existence of this world is actually explained by the fact that it was the best one. It was the best one. Okay. And so that, okay, so why does this necessary being create anything at all? Because it's better that it create than it not. Okay. Mm-hmm. Does that mean it had to? I would say no. It just means it wouldn't fail to do it. Right.
And this goes back to the St. Joseph example we gave in the previous conversation.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Why did it create this one? Because it's the best one. It's better than all the other ones. Right. Maybe it's all of them. Okay. John Wesley. Right. But it's
or O'Connor. And I do want to say, like, if you guys want a contemporary and very rigorous defense of this type of reasoning, where O'Connor's going to say, actually, this does still satisfy the conditions for freedom and contingency, you have to go to O'Connor's book. I think that's one of probably kind of at the cutting edge of the contemporary debate of this, right? But sticking with Leibniz for now.
Sticking with Leibniz for now. And so, what explains this one rather than the other ones? Because it's the best. Okay. Well, it can't be a frivolous choice on this first clause's part, right? And Leibniz says, it was a matter of, it's not his term, but I'll say, well, he does say this other places, moral necessity, right? Mm-hmm. Meaning it was what was the best thing to do. And this thing is so virtuous, it would never fail to do the best thing. Okay. Now, if you ask, why think the first clause is so virtuous? Well, Leibniz would say, if the first clause is not so virtuous, then the world doesn't meet the PSR. That's impossible because everything has to meet the PSR. Therefore, the first clause must be that virtuous, right?
Right. The PSR for him is right. It's something we know a priori. The PSR,
a priori, right? Yeah. Mm-hmm. And so now look, like you're from that little move he made there, you got not only a first clause as a necessary being, but now you got a first clause as a free agent and as a morally perfect free agent. If the first cause is not a morally perfect free agent, Leibniz would say we have not satisfied the PSR, and therefore that's a metaphysical impossibility. So run your modus tollens. It's got to be the case.
Yeah. Dude's a boss. I mean, there's no doubt
He's a
about
boss.
Leibniz. He's a boss.
Yeah.
He really is, right? I mean, like, other theists are going to have their quibbles and we can explore them, but you just gotta admire the man's mind in so many different ways. I mean, look, anybody who invents the differential calculus obviously can't be too much of a dope, right?
Yeah, I mean, right, exactly.
Awesome. Good stuff, Jim. Should we keep going here?
Yeah, should we do another paragraph?
Yeah, let's do another paragraph.
That'll get us through a page and a half for the day, man.
As long as is the next paragraph relevant. Let's see here. Yeah, I think so. All right, here we go. But you say this comparison between a certain determining metaphysical mechanism and the physical mechanism of heavy bodies, though it seems elegant, is faulty insofar as the heavy bodies striving really exist, while possibilities or essences before, or rather outside of existence, are imaginary or fictional, and therefore one cannot seek a reason for existence in them. So he's addressing the point I was bringing up earlier now.
Yeah.
I respond that neither those essences nor the so-called eternal truths to them are fictitious. Rather, they exist in a certain realm of ideas, so to speak, namely in God himself, the source of every essence and of the existence of the rest. The very existence of the actual series of things shows that we seem not to have spoken without grounds, for the reason for things must be sought in metaphysical necessity or eternal truth, since I have showed above, it cannot be found in the actual series of things. But existing things cannot derive from anything but existing things, as I have already noted, so it is necessary that eternal truths had their existence in a certain absolute or metaphysically necessary subject, that is, in God, through whom those things which otherwise would be imaginary are realized, to use barbaric but graphic expression. So existing as ideas in the mind of God, loosely speaking, right?
Yeah.
Traditional Augustinian position.
Augustinian,
here,
yeah.
right?
And for in other places like this is Leibniz's theory of the metaphysics of modality, right? Okay, what are the truth makers for all these modal truths?
Right. God sets the ultimate framework for possibility.
Yeah. And this is why Leibniz is not David Lewis, right?
Yeah.
Like he doesn't think just because when looking for truth maker, and by any theist can avoid David Lewis, right? So you're looking for a truth maker for for modal claims, right? Well, you could say, well, it turns out they're all just actual or concrete in some sense, right? Or you could say, well, they're ideas in the mind of God. And Leibniz is going that latter route. Right?
Yeah. And I want to highlight this. I think the theist perspective here on modality, conjoined with an Aristotelian perspective that Proust would say is by far the best in the market, right? Because we do, like, obviously there are certain modal limiters because sometimes people think this is extreme. They'll say, well, look, that means that it seems like certain things that we think might be possible might not actually be possible, like the world with one burning kitten in it. But I want to say, like, search your intuitions there, right? There does seem something really weird about the world with one burning kitten in it, right? My intuition is
depending
actually
on your taste.
Depending on your taste, my intuition is that that just doesn't seem like a way reality would actually be.
Right.
And having a sort of theistic, perfect being theism framework that sets the modal stage, so to speak, actually, I think satisfies a lot of modal intuition, or makes the best sense of our best modal intuitions. Let me put it that way. Makes the best sense of our best modal intuitions.
Agreed. 100%.
Yeah.
100%.
Cool. Is that a natural stopping point for this text?
Yeah, I think so. Let's keep it manageable. Right.
All right. Awesome.
And then because I think next we're going to start getting into more of the theodicy stuff in here. So.
Right. Yeah. Really great. Having a lot of fun this. All right, guys. You have any questions or comments? Let's spend a few minutes here. All right. Here's an unrelated question.
I tell you, I feel like you tricked me and dragged me back into Leibniz, Pat. I mean, I
had to do it, man. Had to do it.
Right.
You knew it was coming.
I knew it was coming.
JC Beat says, here's an unrelated question. That's all right. What's your take on Heidegger's forgetfulness of being?
My take is he's right. But that is a long story to tell. We'll figure out some short Heidegger essays we can do on here sometime. That would be good for us, right?
Yeah. Hello to Catholic Base. Brennan says, Conan, what is best? This question about what is best is awesome, but I'm still trying to process it.
Crush your enemies, see them driven before you, and hear the lamentations of his women. right?
Duh.
Duh.
Now, it seems like we clarified it because he says, I think it's more clear, the paragraph that set off Jim's spider sense health.
Well, what is best for Leibniz? It is the most good for the least investment. That's what's best for Leibniz. Yeah.
Yeah, very much about efficiency. Indeed,
Efficiency.
indeed. Awesome, good stuff. Thanks for tuning in, gentle listeners. Really enjoying this this series here. So, a few announcements on my end before we go, and then we'll hear what Dr. Jim is up to. As always, if you have not seen our beautiful new website, please head over to philosophyforthepeople.com. Subscribe to that. I do try to upload most of the stuff there with show notes and linked resources. So check that out. And if you want to support our sponsor, please check out Sarah Bussey. She's the one who designed that beautiful website at magdalenedesignco.com. That's magdalenedesignco.com. Let me say a few things. What I really appreciate about Sarah is not only does she make a beautiful website, as somebody who's been a business owner for many years now, she gets what business owners are looking for in websites, how to make them smart, functional, marketing driven. So if you're, again, a philosopher who wants a website to display your crappy articles that never got published, or if you want to create a memorial page for dead iguanas, with all due respect, Sarah can help you do any of that. She can help your dreams come true. Tell her you know Pat and Jim. Head over to magdalenedesignco.com. Jim, any announcements on your end?
No announcements on my end. Just, also, we're circulating some short hot takes from some of our episodes, so please like and share those. I think that's going to help. It's going to help philosophy people a great deal. Yeah.
Oh, we have one other thing. Brendan has a good question here. When are you guys doing the courses? Well, one is already done on my end, and then I'm going to let Jim talk about his. So let me share that quickly. Let's see here.
Yeah, we're I should have my first course ready to start recording it next weekish. So
check it out. Here's where you'll get the courses. Go to Philosophy for People, then shop courses. Guys, they're super cheap. I've got the first one at $30. It's really it's worth it. It's 4 lectures. It's called Foundations of Reality, and it's me giving a contemporary contingency argument. So if you're digging the Leibniz stuff and want to kind of like scoot along in the debates, we'll take a real deep dive there, and I'll walk you through using the contingency argument as a tool for understanding the foundations of reality. And I do break it into 2 stages, following our friend Bill Rowe, God rest him, right? And then I work through many of the contemporary objections, and I think you guys will enjoy it. So that's there. And then, Jim, tell us a little bit about the nihilism course you're working on.
Yeah, so I'm going to have it looks like it's going to be a 5 or 6 lecture course on Nietzsche and the death of God and nihilism. Will be my first offering there. And there too,
call it How Not to Be a Nihilist, right?
How Not to Be a Nihilist is the title of the course. Yeah. And we should start recording that next week.
Awesome. And at some point, Jim, what do you think? Maybe we'll create the People's Passport and some type of subscription where they can just get access to the courses.
That'd be a smart way to do it. Like
the People's Passport.
Yeah, I don't know if this is the time or place to do it, but I'm going to do it anyway. Is just talking about this, like we're not. You and I are putting a great deal of content available. We want it to be free, like we say in the mission statement. We want there to be free philosophy content out there. But we're also not like doing the, hey, support us on Patreon, like pay us to do what you could have gotten for free anyway or anything like that.
Mm-hmm.
But this is for both of us, a great investment of our resources in putting this material out there. And so, a way to support it, to see to it that this can keep happening, is to like pick up these courses. And if you compare
transfer the monetary units, guys, come on.
Exactly. Yeah. And if you compare like what we're going to charge these courses compared to what other high quality online education is going to cost you, it's a steal. And this is just really it's pennies. It's our way of giving you a way to support philosophy for the people, right? And to keep it so we can do all this stuff for free too.
Yeah, without like the same annoying, like everyone's got the freaking Patreon and all that stuff. We want to build these curriculums. We want to give you guys high quality stuff that is affordable. Now, look, we'll keep doing this super in-depth free stuff, but if you want the specialized, deeper, more intimate on these topics, please do support us. We are asking for your support there. And we'll continue to mention those courses as they become more available. The one is up now. Jim's is coming soon, and we'll announce it as soon as it's live. So thank you, Brendan, for your interest. We really do appreciate that.
Yeah, I appreciate it, Brendan.
Highlight just another comment here. Meow says, just want to say I'm enjoying the series a lot, helping me deal with COVID. LOL. Sorry to hear that, man. We'll pray that you have a swift recovery, my friend. But I'm glad that you're enjoying a little bit of Leibniz as you.
Yeah. What better way to get through COVID than Leibniz, man? I mean,
that's right. Right.
I can't.
And just remember, COVID was part of the perfect world. So
exactly, it's the part of the principle of efficiency.
We'll return Voltaire's cartoons right on his head.
Exactly.
Oh man, good stuff. All right, guys, we're gonna sign off here. Please like, share, comment after the video, subscribe. We'll talk to you guys next time. Peace.
Excellent.